Alright, looks like we're live. This is Sterling here for jazzpianoschool.com. And hang out for a little bit before we get started. About 5 minutes before the hour. Going to wait to see who's tuning in. Got a fun podcast planned for you all. How to play Fly Me to the Moon in 5 different styles. We're just going to see who connects. And in the meantime, I'm going to get warmed up a little bit. Got my keyboard here. Just doing a little Hannah, you know how it is. It's 10 a.m. over here, Pacific time. So that would be 1 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. What else? I think that would be 10 a.m. tomorrow, Australia time, Brisbane. Have a student in Brisbane now. It's pretty cool to be able to connect virtually with anyone around the world. So if you're tuning in, tell us where you're from. And let's see here. Any comments yet? Not yet. Looks like we have a couple of viewers. That's great. Still wait a few minutes so people can make their way in. This is my first live lesson with y'all, so I'm excited to get started. I know Brendan's done a couple of these. And we'll be doing a little podcast recording today as well. Alright, we'll be getting started in just 1 minute. Let's see here. Okay, sweet. So it's 10 a.m. We're going to get started with the live lesson today. For those of you that haven't seen me, my name's Sterling. I've done a couple of podcasts in the past, but I don't think you've ever seen my face, so this is what I look like. I've been on the JPS team for a couple of years now. Super excited to be able to bring you live content. Up until now, it's all been pre-recorded, which is cool, but we're kind of moving into the 21st century here with the live streams. I've been doing some live streams of my own, performing solo piano and ensembles, so that's been super fun. And now we're doing live lessons, so really great to be able to connect with y'all immediately, simultaneously in person and virtually. So like I said, anybody anybody from around the world can tune into this as long as you have the link. So feel free to share the link with anybody. And we're also going to do a little podcast recording today. So let's see, here we go. Cool. Oh, all right. What's up? It looks like Marcos is here from Brazil. That's awesome. I wonder what time it is in Brazil. Glad you're here, Marcos. Great. So we're gonna get started with the podcast here. I'm gonna give a little introduction, and then I'm gonna complete the lesson, and we'll have some time for questions at the end of the podcast. So in that time we can interact. There's a little bit of a delay with the comments, so I'll try to get to those as soon as I can once we open it up for questions. And here we go. So this is going to be the podcast portion. All right. Hey everybody, this is Sterling Cozza here for jazzpianoschool.com. Welcome to this podcast. Today we're covering the 5 ways to play Fly Me to the Moon in different jazz piano styles. So this was actually a member request. Someone requested, how do I play standards in different styles? And I think this is such a great idea, because how many times have you been practicing a tune or at a gig, and you get your tune that comes up? Maybe it's Fly Me to the Moon, maybe it's Have You Met Miss Jones, or Lady Bird or something, and you're like, man, I just play this tune the same way every time, and I feel like I'm playing the same ideas, and it's just real old. It gets old really quick, especially if you've been playing the same tune for a while and you want to just kind of mix things up. So one of the first things I look for in approaching a standard from a different point of view is playing it in a different style. So it's easy to get caught up in playing these standards, similar to kind of the 1950s bebop or hard bop tradition, kind of that straight ahead jazz style. And you'll find that in modern music, people are drawing from a variety of styles. So you might hear a straight eighths groove, or a funk groove, or a gospel groove, or a ballad, or anything like that that makes its way into their music. And we can take this same approach with standards. We don't have to, recompose the tune by any means. We can just take what's already there, take the chord changes and the melody that they already gave us, and interpret it in a new way. And it can give you a completely unique sound, and more importantly, just kind of dust the cobwebs off and just go for something different, So today I figured we'd look at the standard Fly Me to the Moon, very, very classic tune. Everybody knows the Frank Sinatra version with the big shout chorus, great swing, big band arrangement. But how often have you heard that tune in different styles? I haven't heard it in very many recordings anyway, so I figured I'd do a couple of versions myself for y'all today. For example, so we're going to start by just playing the tune down, as it's originally written. Just kind of a typical jazz piano approach to this tune. Kind of left-hand chords and some right-hand melody. Maybe a little bit of improvisation just to get in the groove a little bit. So I'm playing this tune in the key of C. The first chord is A minor. So here's Fly Me to the Moon. that's kind of an idea of how I'd approach this tune if I was playing it straight up. Just standard, a lot of left hand, 7th chord and 9th chord voicings, maybe some shell voicings. I'm playing the melody in the right hand, maybe adding some phrases in between, but really keeping it within that swing style, And that's a totally viable way of playing this tune, but it's a very conventional one. So it's one that's often heard, the same, kind of a similar genre, similar era of jazz, kind of that maybe 50s, early 60s sound, before we got, kind of any fusion or avant-garde stuff going on. So let's see if we can kind of depart from that and explore some different styles. So the first style that we're going to explore is a total 180. Like we said, we heard the Frank Sinatra. This is a swing tune. What if we played it as a ballad? Well, the first thing that we'd need to adjust is the tempo, right? Because ballads are traditionally slower. So we'd be adjusting the tempo. The second would be our approach to the keyboard. You'll notice I was playing a lot of short chords, like rhythmic things in the left hand. We're going to play a lot longer, more sustained chords, and perhaps even some arpeggios. I'll be using the pedal more, so you can listen for that. And I'm going to go with kind of more of a free-flowing style. So let's hear how that sounds. Let's try this one as a ballad. This would be if you were, at the piano bar and somebody said, play us a ballad, and you're like, man, I ran out of ballads, so I guess I got to play Fly Me to the Moon. Or maybe you're just trying to throw people off. So here would be Fly Me to the Moon as a ballad. I'd probably play some kind of introductory chord. So a much different interpretation of that standard, Fly Me to the Moon. And as we discussed, a lot of sustained chords, a lot of arpeggios to really get that flowing style. You'll also notice that the first half of the piece, I was very loosely interpreting the melody, sort of a rubato approach. Almost even kind of a classical sound that I was going for. I come from a classical background, so playing music by composers like Chopin, Brahms, Beethoven, and I try to take that approach into my piano playing. So you'll notice in this last piece I was playing a lot of triads, a lot of kind of more demonstrative right hand chords, kind of harmonizing the melody, instead of I was making it a little fuller. So I like these 4-note triads. Because they're very full, and it gives that kind of classical sound that I was looking for in my interpretation of this ballad. There's a lot of different ways to play a ballad, and it depends on your sensibilities on the instrument and kind of your background. For example, somebody like Red Garland might play a ballad much different than Bill Evans, for example, or even somebody like Keith Jarrett, who has maybe more of a pop sensibility, might play it different than somebody like Kenny Barron, for example, who's more of a straight ahead jazz guy, kind of more in the 60s and 70s. So this ballad approach can be a great way to have a different take on a standard. Somebody might not even recognize it. They might go, "What's that beautiful piece you're playing?" And you're like, "Oh well, it's just fly." You could say it's just "Fly Me to the Moon," or you could even just say, "Oh, I wrote that one." If you're at a gig, they might not even be able to recognize the melody because you're embellishing it and you're playing all these arpeggios, kind of cocktail piano style. So that can be a great way to repurpose a standard, especially if you're running low on tunes at the end of a long 3-hour gig or something like that. But it can be a great way to create an original rendition of a standard. So that takes me into our third style, and that would be more of a pop style. Like I said, we mentioned someone, Keith Jarrett, who he came up in the late 60s, early 70s when rock music was getting really popular, and he really took that and ran with it. And a lot of people know him for his solo concerts, the Cologne concert in particular, 1976, I believe, somewhere in the mid-70s there. And he was really internalizing kind of more of this pop sound, and that made its way into his improvising. So just because we're playing standards doesn't mean that we can't blend these genres still, these different styles. So what if we came at this "Fly Me to the Moon" but kind of took more of a pop approach to this song? That would be very interesting because this song was written during the era of the Great American Songbook. So in the 40s and 50s, this song was played all the time, heard as a swing style, but who knows what it would sound like as a pop piece. So let's find out. A little pop piano version. And I'm going to be using a lot of intervals to harmonize the melody, such as sixths and thirds, or just for that kind of smoother sound. And look for the left hand. I'll be playing kind of more of a figuration using 1-5-10 or 1-5-1, kind of more in that pop tradition. So here's "Fly Me to the Moon" as a pop tune. And we could go on to improvise on this a little bit more. You'll notice the first thing that changed was the rhythm again. The rhythm is really key in expressing these different styles. In this particular arrangement with the pop style, you'll notice that I was using straight eighth notes. So as opposed to the swing where it was in the pop, it's a little more eighth note, straight eighth note oriented. Kind of more of that straight eighth note feel. And similar to the ballad approach, I was really trying to create a smooth sound on the piano by including left hand figurations that really keep the flow of the music going. So something like. Really keeping that eighth note flow, in my opinion, really gives that pop sound that smoothness that's really attractive in genres, in that genre. And we could go on to improvise in this. It would be something kind of more of a straight eighths thing. that style. So I'm really hearing, those flowing eighth notes, flowing melodic lines. You could explore that more by using arpeggios and different voicings. You could expand upon the motive from the melody, with the sixth, maybe thirds. You could improvise with some thirds. Practice some double thirds for that, which would be fun. But as we can see, quite a wealth of opportunities in that pop genre for variation and for improvisation in that different style, especially if that's a style that you're more familiar with. I mean, personally, I'm more of a jazz aficionado, and I enjoy a lot of funk and hip hop and R&B and stuff, real smooth. Music, and the pop stuff is less familiar to me because I grew up with a classical background. But if you're a totally well versed in the pop genre, that could come to you very naturally. So if you choose to interpret some standards that way, that could be a really viable form of expression if you want to experiment with that. So cool. We made it through our third style with the pop genre. Next, we're going to move into another straight eighth style, and this is Latin music. So, there's a lot of different varieties of Latin music in that genre. In cultural forms such as samba, bossa nova. Let's see, what else? Samba, bossa nova, and there's various beats that you can use, including the songo. I've heard of like a rumba. Very different styles that all go under the umbrella of Latin. So if you happen to be a Latin musician, you're going to be familiar with a lot of these different styles, and you probably are doing this already, interpreting these standards. Musicians such as Paquito de Rivera and Pancho Sanchez, they've been playing standards in different styles for a long time, and maybe that's something in the mainstream that we're not totally familiar with, but it's something that is really great. And there's a lot of tunes that are written in that style, such as tunes by Antonio Carlos Jobim. You might be familiar with tunes like Corcovado and Girl from Ipanema, famous tunes like that, or How Insensitive. And if you're used to playing songs in that style, kind of that Brazilian style, you can transfer that to tunes that you play already, like Fly Me to the Moon, for example, and trying them in a Latin style. So, I kind of refer to the tune Corcovado for reference because that's a tune that I'm very familiar with in that kind of that Brazilian sort of, one could call that sort of a bossa nova style. For those of you that aren't familiar, the tune Corcovado sounds like this. It's a very beautiful song. So I kind of am approaching this Fly Me to the Moon tune in that similar vein. So I'm kind of going more of the Brazilian route. But, if you wanted to, you could go a different direction with more of a Cuban or Central American, whatever tradition of Latin music that you identify with the most. But I'm going to be going kind of more of the Brazilian route here, kind of in the style of Antonio Carlos Jobim. So you'll notice that I use some similar techniques to the pop rendition because they're both straight eights, so there's a lot of crossover. So I'm harmonizing the melody in intervals again, but you'll notice the style is slightly different. And I'll play a little intro just to kind of get the style going. So you have that kind of smooth flowing style again, similar to the pop, but in this case the biggest difference is that we're incorporating a little more rhythm. So in the Brazilian style, in the Latin style, we're using claves, we're using rhythms that appear over the bar line. So for example, a rhythm like ba 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 ba. So that'd be 2-measure rhythm. That clave, in particular, that's a 2-3 clave. Having 2 beats in the first measure and 3 beats in the second measure. So if you're curious more about Latin rhythm and claves, there's a podcast previous that you can refer to that talks about how to use claves and play in that style. But you'll notice that I was incorporating that into my arrangement here, and accompanying myself with left hand kind of bass notes, and also reaching up for some chords. So with that foundation, I could also do a little improvisation in this style. Let's see what that would sound like. So one of the things I also find really characteristic of this style, this kind of bossa nova Brazilian style, is a lot of offbeats. So as I was improvising, I found that the offbeats were feeling really good. So for example, phrasing this melody with offbeats would sound. And so on. So that really separates this Brazilian, this Latin style from the pop style, because we're really feeling these offbeats in a different way, which gives the music a really unique flow. That's one of the things I love about the music of A.C. Jobim and Brazilian music in general. It's got this really smooth flow to it, and that comes from feeling the offbeats. And you can kind of feel that in the clave, the So as you can see, there's a lot of different options when playing styles such as this kind of Latin approach, and it also incorporates a lot of different techniques on the keyboard. You'll notice I was playing bass lines, I was also playing shell voicings in the left hand, I was improvising in straight eighth notes, and I was just accompanying with a bass line and chords. So these are all things that you can refer to back in previous podcasts, whether it's shell voicings or bass lines or Latin rhythms. So a lot of different techniques that you can explore in this style, and also gives you a lot of stuff to practice. One of my favorite things about playing tunes of different styles is it exploits or exposes certain holes in my playing that I need to work on. So if I need to work on my offbeat phrasing, I can practice that. If I need to work on my left-hand accompaniment in a certain style, it'll give me something to practice, which is really great. So that brings us to our last style. This is our fifth style, and this is going to be another straight eighths thing, but kind of more of a funky type thing. In particular, we're going to be exploring kind of more of a habanera sort of New Orleans style. So this sound was exemplified by pianists such as Professor Longhair, and pianists and organists like Dr. John, and there's a particular pianist that I'm thinking of. What's his name? Let's see. His name escapes me, unfortunately. But kind of this New Orleans sound of kind of this fusion of Jelly Roll Morton called it the Spanish sound. So it's called the habanera rhythm. And it made its way into New Orleans jazz and blues and gospel and everything. And you'll recognize this sound as kind of more of that New Orleans piano style. So in particular, the rhythm itself is kind of another offbeat rhythm, kind of in the Latin vein, but it's more of a funky type thing. So the rhythm, the habanera rhythm, is. So that habanera rhythm, Jelly Roll Morton used a lot in his compositions because he was so taken with that rhythm when it made its way to New Orleans, where he spent a lot of time making music. And so the music itself, the tradition of that style, really found roots in that rhythm. And then you have kind of more blues piano that made its way into, on top of that, to sort of combine into this New Orleans sound. So I'm gonna attempt to combine these sounds over the standard "Fly Me to the Moon." So a little introduction, just to get the groove going, and I'll be in the key of C major again, so something like this. Okay, so gave my best shot at a little improv there. This is probably a style that's the least familiar to me, so it's something I need to work on. But you can kind of hear I was reaching for some blues content, kind of to get that New Orleans flavor, kind of in that style. And I was really drawing from that habanera rhythm in the left hand, that Latin sound. It really gives that groove some momentum. Really feeling those offbeats and getting kind of that blues sound. I was also incorporating some stylistic choices, for on the piano, such as grace notes, kind of that blues style. Also some tremolos. Kind of that thing. Holding some chords in the middle. And somebody like Jelly Roll Morton is really the master of this, playing melodies with chords. He calls it trumpet style. So again, similar to the beginning of this lesson where you heard the ballad style with 4-note chords harmonizing the melody. With octaves in between. This is going to be more of a raucous style. My touch is a lot harder to get that percussiveness in my piano sound. So you'll notice the harder touch, and also I'm sometimes using 4 or even 5 notes for every melody note. So that can create a really fun energy for this tune, kind of in this New Orleans, kind of more blues and habanera based piano style. So that was our last style, and so we played Fly Me to the Moon in 5 different styles. We had a traditional kind of swing era or jazz style. We had a ballad style, a pop style, a Latin style, and then we finished with a sort of a New Orleans sort of blues and Latin inspired sort of fusion style. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways to approach one tune, and you can honestly you can play it back to back, and somebody might not even recognize the tune if you're really getting into it. So I hope this gives you some ideas of some ways that you can reinvigorate your practice or your performance when you're playing through your repertoire. It can also augment your repertoire list, and you can come up with some cool arrangements that you could play. You could even do some of these styles with a full band if you wanted to. So this is a great way to diversify and find some new things in your music. And I wish you all the best, and can't wait to hear what you create. So that's it for the live lesson. And we're going to open it up for questions now. Awesome. Let's see. Looks like we got a couple friends here from all over the place. We got someone we got Tara from Florida. We got Leo from the Netherlands. Excellent. Cool. So if anybody has any questions about the lesson from today, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. And remember, there's a little bit of a delay, so after you leave your comment, I'll be able to see it after 10 or 15 seconds or so I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. So I'll be hanging. Cool. It looks like Bogas was asking, is this live or recorded? Yeah, no, we're live, man. This is totally live. So if I make any mistakes, it's out on the internet forever. But more importantly, if you leave a comment or any questions, I can answer it in person. Even though I'm at my studio in California, I can answer any of your questions wherever you may be coming from, which I think is pretty cool. So as I said, this is my first live lesson that I've done for JPS, and I think we have yet to put it up on the website and send it out in the email. So the attendance might be a little lower than usual today, but in the future we'll be broadcasting anytime I have a live lesson. So we'll have a kind of a more usual audience. We usually have more attendees, so it's a little light today, but that's cool. I'll be hanging for 5 minutes or so. I think I'm just gonna play a little piano. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. Looks like Paul is asking about the stride course. Yeah, man, the stride course is great. I've been working on it for the last few months. Got a lot of materials ready for you all. We'll be releasing that for the Memorial Day weekend sale. And that's going to feature a lot of material stemming all the way from Scott Joplin. Stuff. All those classics like Maple Leaf Rag, The Entertainer, and extending all the way into the forefathers of stride piano like Jelly Roll Morton, Fats Waller, extending into Harlem stride like James P. Johnson. Earl Hines, all the greats, man. We got transcriptions in there. We've got exercises that'll really get that stride foundation in your left hand, moving through keys, doing it over standards. We've even got like some Art Tatum and Teddy Wilson and kind of some right hand licks that you can use to really get into that style. So I'm really excited about it. The course is really coming together nicely. And by the end of it, if you take the course, I can safely say that by the end you will have a tool bag that will really allow you to play stride repertoire, ragtime, also approaching standards. Just like we were doing today, approaching standards from a different point of view. You can take a standard that might not necessarily have a stride approach, but give it more of that stride sound. One of the standards that would be good for that is Ain't Misbehavin'. Something like. So kind of that Fats Waller style. He's one of my favorites, man. His left hand is just killing it, and it feels so good. His voicings are so full. So we'll be showcasing some Fats Waller in the course. Looking at some tunes like Ain't Misbehavin'. So I'm really excited to get to share that with you all, and I hope you can check it out. Thanks for asking about that, Paul. Let's see. Trevor was asking about how would you accompany a singer with this song? That's a great question, Trevor. And the first question about that, if I were to answer your question with a question, is what style are you playing it in? Since you asked, I'm going to assume that we're playing it in a jazz style, which is totally cool. It's important to be able to accompany in a jazz style. If I were accompanying a singer, I'd be responsible for two things, the bass and the harmony. And I could incorporate some more melody, but I don't want to get in his or her way. So I'm going to be playing left-hand bass and chords. So if they're playing the melody, that means I'm good to cover the bass and the harmony. So if we're playing this in a swing style, I'm going to want to really get that swing feeling, especially if we don't have a drummer or a bassist. If it's just piano, which is often the case, I'm going to want to get that swing feel by really having some nice rhythms between my hands. So I might play a little intro. That's important for a singer. I'll probably play the last four measures. Moment to shine if you want to take a solo or whatever. But that's how I would generally accompany a singer on this song. The intro is really important, especially giving them their first note, which is C. And I like to play a combination of left-hand bass while also playing two-handed chords kind of in between to really get that rhythm seamless. You can start by just playing left-hand bass and right-hand chords. With some swinging rhythms. You could call this kind of more of a two-feel. If you wanted to play walking bass, you could. I generally tend to avoid walking bass when it's just piano and a solo instrument, whether it's voice or horn. Just because it's a little one-dimensional. It's totally great if that's what you like and if you want to really give that 4-beat swing feel. But I like to mix things up a little more. I like to play that 2 feel and the right hand chords, but sometimes let the hands link up to play some chords or even some counter melodies. So you'll notice I'm using a lot of two-handed voicings, which I think is really fun because it gives you that full sound on the keyboard. So that's how I would approach accompanying a singer. You could start with that two feel and the right-handed chords, and when you're more comfortable with the two-handed chords, that can give you a really full sound on the instrument and really feel good, especially for the vocalists, because they'll feel really supported. So if you have more questions about accompanying singers, you can check out the Accompanying Singers course in JPS, which is a specialty course available for purchase. So I highly recommend that one. So thanks for that question, Trevor. That's really great. Let's see. Yeah, jazz mid-tempo. Got it. So we covered it. Awesome. Nicolo was asking about a bebop version of that tune. Yeah, man, I'm glad you asked because, I was playing kind of more of like a 50s, 60s, the first version, kind of a later straight ahead era, kind of similar to Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, hard bop, or also kind of Bill Evans, more post-bop sound. But bebop is really important to be able to play convincingly and play well. So although the tune Fly Me to the Moon is not always performed as a bebop tune, one could perform it that way. And it would be similar in the jazz style, but you'd be playing a little faster and more harmonically adventurous lines. So let's see what that would sound like. I might play a little intro. So that was a little more burn-in version of Fly Me to the Moon. I think of pianists like Bud Powell, Duke Jordan, Billy Taylor, and Wynton Kelly, although he's more of a hard bop guy, but I draw from that vocab. So Fly Me to the Moon, if you wanted to play it as a bebop, you'd probably want to play it faster like that, because bebop was all about taking pre-existing tunes and playing them faster, burn-in, playing more virtuosic things. If you wanted to practice this, it sounded like I needed practice a little bit. It was a little messy, but I'd be practicing my melodies. I'd be playing scales through the chords. Stuff. You could also practice some chords. And it can be helpful to slow this down so you can really be accurate with the notes you're playing. And I could even put on a metronome. Just arpeggiating the chords of Fly Me to the Moon. So that's a great way to practice that approach to improvising, because it gives you some notes you can play, and it's definitely hard to think when you're playing that fast. So if you practice things ahead of time, you won't have to think as much. So that's how I'd approach playing that tune in a bebop style. I'm glad you asked about that, Nicolo. Thank you. Cool, so I'll be hanging around for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. Looks like we got a few more viewers. That's awesome. Really glad to connect with y'all today. This is my first live lesson for JPS, so I'm super psyched. I'm looking forward to doing more of these. The last thing I was wondering is if I could play this in a kind of an R&B style. I'd probably play it with an electric piano. Let's see.